All right. Good afternoon. How is everyone? Oh, wow, okay. Enthusiastic. So, like he said, I'm an RA at CDOT right now. I just graduated. I've been working here for just over 2 years, and this is my third FSOSS and my second time presenting at FSOSS. My very first time presenting here was a bit awkward because our title for the presentation was a bit vague, and turns out, long story short, the audience was much more guru-like than I thought. So they knew a lot more than I did when I was talking, which is kind of weird. So hopefully this time I'm going to get it right. And I just want to let you know what this presentation is going to be about. It's not going to be a slideshow like you've probably seen all throughout FSOSS. It's going to be more of an interactive demo. What I want to do is show you quickly some basic commands in Linux, but also get into more advanced details. And hopefully, depending on your skill level, you'll be able to learn something new. But just by the show of hands, I want to know what your skill level is here. How many people are familiar with the bash shell or use Linux frequently? Is there anyone who doesn't and is brand new? Don't be shy. Okay, great. So I will be giving you some quick starter tips, but I won't spend too much time on it. And if you feel like you already know this stuff, or you're just not interested, feel free to leave or stay. It's up to you. What I'm going to be going over is basically the basics with certain options you can use with ls, makedir, just for a few minutes. But then I'm going to get into SSHing, how to use grep, sed, awk, and terminal emulators such as tmux and screen, and how to use them efficiently and what you can use them for if you don't already know. I'm also going to do an in-depth review of, well, not a review, but a detailed usage of Vim and how to use Vim proficiently, or VI or Vi, however you want to pronounce it. I know some people are picky about that. Justin? VI. No, whatever you want to call it, okay? And if we have more time at the end of this interactive demo, we will do some more complex details, mainly using DD commands and mounting partitions and doing really cool stuff that maybe you've never done before. So yeah, starting off with the basics. These are the commands that you're going to be doing most of the time. I'm sure most of you know what the ls command does. But just before I get into that, one thing you should probably know is whenever you're typing out commands or files or directories, you can easily tab these things out, and that will help you complete the process much faster. Like say, for example, I want to use the command kpartx. I'll just do kp and tab that out. Pressing the tab button is so much faster than typing the whole thing out because you leave out the chance of causing an error, typing in the wrong thing, and then you're going to spend the longest time trying to figure it out. I've seen people trying to show the directory all the way down to I don't know, a really, really long directory, and they type the whole thing out. This is a big pet peeve of mine. Just tab it out. It's so much easier, and it saves so much time. And another thing, if you have, I don't know, if you're curious about what a command does, or you're just completely lost on how to use it, you could use the man command, because most Linux applications, they have man pages which show you the more in-depth tutorial or guide on how to use the application. So say, for example, I use the man pages of kpartx. You can see that I have all the options here, and it tells me what they do, and some examples of how to use them, with some other information you might not care about, like the authors. But it's there for you. If you want to do a quicker search for help, you can always do -h or --help, which is usually available on all Linux commands, but sometimes they're not. And sometimes you'll have to use one or the other, and it's kind of annoying because H is not there or --help is not there. And, well, usually, at least if one of them's there, then you're fine. You're not too far off. Yeah, so let's start off with ls. The ls is just a simple listing of your directories and files in your current working directory. Many of you probably know that already. If you're used to Windows and CMD, this is just or similar to dir, the dir command. Some options you might want to use with ls is -a. This will show you all of your hidden files. -H, which will show you the, well, using -LH because I need to show something else. -H just shows you the long listing of your directories and files, which will give you the human readable size of these files. If you don't, it's going to give you the bytes, and if this is a really large file, like say 20 gigs, it's not going to be very easy to realize. That's pretty common to know, but when you're typing out, you might have noticed that there are some shortcuts. In most modern operating systems, LL is alias to ls-l, which I find it's a small fix to make it a bit faster, but typing LL is much faster than typing ls-l or just ls. And I find LL is much more nice. It's very ordered and lines up for you. It gives you more information than you might need, but that's okay. And if you're coming from an Ubuntu side, Ubuntu also has the L command, which is a shorter version of ls. Not exactly sure what it does as well. If you don't already know, when you're writing commands, you can combine options without having to separate them, like ls or ll-ah or d. The d command, the d option just tells you the details of the directory without actually listing the contents of the directory. That's useful if you ever need to find out the permissions of a directory and you can't necessarily find it right away. Useful to know, but I'll skip over that. So if you might have seen my PS1 line right here, this is a bit more complex than the traditional one. I don't think I have, well, here's an example of the original PS1. So it's just a simple line with root at my local host name and a squiggly line. You can customize your PS1 just by going into the bash rc file or bash profile. And mine's just here. I found this on Reddit. I thought it was pretty cool. And it's nice to have everything on a separate line at the bottom, because when you get into large directories like user share, I don't know, applications, and you keep going, well, if it gets really long, it's going to get pretty crowded. So it's nice to have that on a separate line so that when you're typing out commands, they don't really get in the way. So that's pretty useful. If you don't already know, the present working directory command gives you the listing of your current directory if it doesn't show you on the top and you need to figure it out right away. To create directories, you just use the make dir command. And if you want to create subdirectories that are not existent, or say, for example, I want to make a test with a directory B with a nested directory B, that's not going to work because you need to use the -p for parent directory. I think that's what it stands for. Yeah. So that's going to create both A and B for me. Pretty simple. So armdir, I'm just going to get rid of this. This is not going to work because the directory is not empty, right? The fastest way to do this is using rm-rf, but I'll go into why that's kind of a risky maneuver. So let me get to that. Right now, let's say I want to move a file or copy a file. I have a file. Let's go into Documents, FSOSS. OK. So I'm going to move, or rather, if you want to move a file, you just use mv. It's pretty straightforward. Move awk, and then you choose the directory you want to put it in, whatever. If you want to use the copy command, use cp instead of copy. If you're from CMD or PowerShell, you get really, really confused when you're switching from one to the other, because in Windows, it's straight out just copy or move or rename. And I've seen a lot of people use the rename command on Linux, and that's not a real thing. It's just move. So yeah, if you're copying a bunch of files that are nested inside a directory, you can use the -r, copy -r. You might want to use the capital R. I don't think there's a difference now, but copy capital R might have, I think, copies over some kind of flag information, or it might have been something that we used in older versions of bash. Right now, I don't think it matters anymore, but I always use capital R. And you choose the directory you want to copy over and the destination. Now, this is going to ask me to depending on what I'm doing with whichever permissions the directories have, it might ask me to overwrite some files. And if I want to do that, it's going to ask me for every file I want to overwrite. And if my directory has, say, 1,000 files, I don't want to be clicking yes for 1,000 times over and over again. That's kind of annoying. So you could use the -F option to force it, and that'll just pretty much activate the quiet mode, as in with Windows. But this is very, very unsafe, and I'll tell you why when I'm using the rm command, which is very similar, except rm is deleting files instead of copying them. But you have the same options there that are available, rm-rf. Now, rm is just to delete a single file. If you're deleting a directory with subdirectories or subfiles, then you probably want to use the recursive one with -F. If you're not going to use it with -F, it's going to ask you for every file you want to delete. Kind of annoying. But if you use -F, you got to be very, very careful, because if you're deleting something on Linux, most of the time you're deleting it forever. You have pretty much no chance of getting it back unless you know data recovery, which you have a chance of getting it back, but it's still not 100%. And it depends on how long it takes you to figure out that you made a mistake. So yeah, be careful with that. There's also, some people have tried doing this. This is a very risky command, but so for those of you who don't know, the root directory has pretty much everything in your file system. It's depending on if you have multiple partitions. If it's just one root directory, then everything that includes your applications, your home files, it's going to be gone. But thanks to innovations that figured out this was a big issue, there's now a safety procedure that tells you, oh, this is a dangerous operation. Yeah, because some of us just want to have some fun, right? But yeah, don't do that, even for fun, because you never know. You might be on a really old Linux machine, and this might not be implemented, and you do a sudo force delete, and your boss is going to be mad at you in the morning, so don't do that. Okay, so that's a little bit of the basics. Change directory. I'm sure most of you know this already. I'm changing directories all the time. Change directory to go to a parent directory, use 2 dots. 1 dot just tells you it's the current directory, and you usually see that a lot of times. No, not here. Oh, there you go. That's at the top right there. So 2 dots, parent directory, 1 dot, current directory. If I want to, another cool trick I learned with CD is you can actually go into a really, really far directory, say, what's a big one? Awk? Let's try awk. No, that's not that far. Okay, so awk is here, and I want to go to root. And let's say I don't want to type out change directory user share awk all the time. That's kind of slow. I can just do change directory dash. I didn't even know this was available until like a few weeks ago when a coworker mentioned it to me. And this brings you back to the previous directory you were in, and this happens back and forth, right? So if you're working on a directory or maybe 2 directories specifically that you need to work in, and you don't necessarily want to open a second terminal, this can help you out a little bit, but not completely. What if you want to work in, say, 5 or more directories, and you want to keep track of which directories you're working in? Well, you can do this by using the pushd command. And the pushd command works like a stack. And for those of you who don't remember what a stack is, think of, you're at Mandarin, right? I know it's a terrible restaurant, but you know when you go to the buffet and you've got the stack of plates, when the person stacks the plates, the first one goes in, the next one goes in, the string goes down lower and lower, and then now your first plate is unreachable, only the top one is, so it's a first in, last out sort of notation. So when I push in the current directory, right now I pushed in the root. You can see now that the root is added. I'm going to now change to my /home directory, and I want to put home in there as well. So I'm going to put home. Okay, now home is in my stack as well. I'll do the same thing for a few more. And you'll see that the stack keeps growing and growing. You don't necessarily have to change into the directory to add it. You can always just add the name just like that. Whoop. Well, now that I have my stack, it's about a few directories large. You can list them by just doing the dirs command. And as you can see, I have root in my stack. That's the first one, /home. And then my home directory followed by documents. It looks like my home directory is there twice. But anyway, so to use this command, or to use this stack, I will change into an example here. I'm in /user now. I want to go back and use the latest plate in my stack. And I'll just do a pop D. And it'll automatically send me to the last plate in my stack. I am now in the home directory, pop D again. Now I'm in the root directory. No, home directory, sorry. And now I'm in the root directory. And I think that's about it now. There we go. The stack is now empty. So that's a nice, useful command. I don't know if a lot of you have ever heard of it. I only learned about it recently. And I found it pretty useful in case you're ever working on multiple directories and stuff like that. But if you don't really care about that, that's okay. We'll get into more complicated stuff very soon. So let's say, for example, I need to find a file that I don't necessarily know the name to, but I know what it starts with. You can use, there's two methods. There's the first one is the find command. Now, the find command has a very strange syntax, which took me a really long time to figure it out. But after some time, I kind of picked it up because it's very useful. You're going to use it pretty often. And let's say I'm in my documents folder. I'll go. So I want to find the README file that's in my FSOSS directory. I'm going to specify find, and then the directory I'm going to be looking in. It's the FSOSS presentation folder. And I want to specify the name of the file. And I know the name starts with README in all caps. But I don't necessarily know the file extension to it, so I'm just going to put an asterisk. That's just a wildcard. For those of you who don't know, you can use wildcards to sort of abstract the information that you don't necessarily know. So asterisk just refers to, well, at least in the bash sense, it refers to anything, like 0 or more, 0 or nothing, nothing or something that comes after README. And I'm looking for anything that starts with README and ends with whatever, either something or nothing. So I found it. There's a README file. It's .md. If I didn't know any better, it would probably be .txt or something like that. So the find command is pretty useful, but it's not necessarily very fast. If you're in the root directory and you have a file system that's like 500 gigs large, and you're looking for a file that you have no idea where it is, this could take like hours, if not days, to find the file. Because honestly, it's going through each and every directory looking for a file, and depending on how fast your hard drive or SSD is, even if you're on an SSD, it could still be very, very slow. So let's give that a try. And if this works really fast, I'm sorry for lying to you. Let's say I'm going to look for, I don't know, what's a good file name? File name, okay. Oh, and you also got to forget, don't forget to use the sudo. If you're looking for a file that's possibly in a root protected directory, use sudo. If it's not, then don't. And we'll see how long this takes. So it's going, it's finding files, but not necessarily the one I want. Wow, that was really fast. Okay, so that's a bad example. But I did just install the system, so there's probably like 6 gigs, 7 gigs used up. Generally, if you're in like a workspace environment and you got like huge virtual machines and large data sets, it's going to take a really, really long time. What you can do to speed up the process, though, is use the locate command. If you don't already know what the locate command is, this is amazing. It's so useful. The locate command is just using indexing to find files using the index location. Now, let's say, for example, I want to find the README file now. I can just use locate, and it found a bunch of README files. It's so fast. Look how much faster that was compared to find. Now, this doesn't always work, because just because you have a file on your file system doesn't necessarily mean you have it indexed for your hard drive or your SSD. What you can do, though, is to update the database, and you need sudo access for that. Update DB just updates the records with all the latest files into your index. And then you can locate again. You probably find more results than I did last time. So yeah, sure.
On job overnight.
Really?
So, yeah.
Okay.
So if you added something today, it won't be found unless you run
Right.
an update logging.
Okay, I never noticed that, but that's cool, yeah. So if you ever feel like you know there's a file there, just try running our update DB. It probably won't take too long. Unless you have a really, really old hard drive, then you probably just need to upgrade your computer. But yeah, so those are the locating commands, but let's get into some more interesting topics now. So SSH. I'm sure most of you know what SSH is if you're at least a student here or you've used Linux before. If you don't, SSH is the secure socket shell or secure shell, however you want to say it. It basically lets you to connect to any remote computer over the network using probably LAN or even, it's probably possible using some other medium, but we usually just use it for LAN. And let's see if I can connect to Seneca's network, which is famous for being so stable and fast. Okay, Seneca CDOT. Come on. This is usually very slow. We have a network switchover going on, or well, already completed, but we're still having some issues with SSHing into our work machines at CDOT. So I have a SSH key, I think. Okay. Yeah, that's my username for Matrix. They didn't let me change it. Well, it's not working now. I have no idea what's wrong with that. But I have another computer, thanks to Michael here. I'm going to SSH into his computer, because that's a lot easier, I find. Yeah, internal dot CDOT systems? Yes, okay. Now, even though this computer is like very close to this location, it still takes a really long time. I find it's faster to just connect from home. But so this is SSHing. I'll also show you some other cool tricks, or well, some things you should be doing. When you're hosting an SSH server on your local machine, what you want to make sure is one really important thing, that SSH permit root. One thing you want to do is make sure that your root login over SSH is disabled, and ideally just don't have a root account, like just disable the password, because we've recently had attacks, not recently, constantly have attacks at CDOT, and these are coming from places in China, Russia. They're just spamming us with login attempts, and mainly they guess the root password. They're just brute forcing random passwords that might work. So you want to prevent them from getting access to it, or at least trying to. They might try some usernames, but if your username's not like super typical, like username John or what have you, they won't be able to guess it that easily. So better be safe and just disable the root password or the root login for SSH. But another thing you want to do is, instead of just using a password login for SSH, you want to use a key, like I'm using here, but it's not. Well, it is working, I hope. Ah, there we go. So what I did there was not just a password login. It was a SSH key that is passphrase protected. And to do that, you can create your SSH key using the SSH keygen command. By default, this is going to create an RSA key. I already have this file, so I'm going to name it something else. ID RSA2. And so a lot of people get lazy when it comes to entering a password. Now, I used to be lazy myself, but after a while, I got convinced that, you know, it's really worth it. Might as well just put in the password because you can have it so that your Linux system automatically unlocks it the first time you type in your password. And so whenever you want to re-log in, it won't ask you. It'll just say, oh, your keys are already unlocked. That's fine. Just go right in. But as soon as you turn off your laptop and reboot it, then you're going to have to enter it again. So if anyone gets access to your private key, they still can't get in without knowing your password. And vice versa, if they know your password, they still need your key, which probably, hopefully, is hard to find. Or you don't have it like on a USB key that anyone can steal from your bag. Don't steal my bag, please. So yeah, that's a pretty important thing. One more thing with SSH, though. If you want to do some graphical stuff, but you can only do it remotely on a computer that's not at home and you don't have access to it physically, you can use the -XC options. X stands for X11, X forwarding rather. X11 is like the standard for today for Linux Windows managing systems. I don't know how to relate that to Windows or anything else, but it's what handles all the windows in your desktop. And let's give that a try. So what I can do here is, oh, wrong one. Enter. Is that right? That is my username. It's there. It should be. It should be the same one. I don't know. And the -C option is just to compress the data, because if you're sending over X11 packets, that's a lot of data, and you probably want to make it fast, because if you're probably working from home, connecting to school or something, that might be really slow. I've had to do that before, and using Firefox over the network can be a pain in the butt, depending on what you're doing, though. And we're behind a NAT right now, so I hope this works. Come on. It worked before. Oh, I'm already in here, but I don't have the X forwarding working yet. So let's try again. Oh, never mind. There we go. Okay, now I'm in Korea. I'm just going to close this. Yeah, by the way, our computer names are based off of countries that we randomly choose. This computer is Korea. Mine is Greenland. I've also worked on Canada and Romania. They're all pretty great. But it's kind of hilarious because, yeah, it's funny. It's an inside joke, yeah. But whenever we're discussing different computer names and people think, oh, is there like a war going on? Like Iraq is down, like, or Iraq is on fire. What's going on? So we got to keep quiet about that sometimes when visitors come by. So let's try running Firefox is a bit heavy. Let's try XEyes. This is one of my favorite applications. Cool. Okay. So now, oops, I'm running XEyes over the network. I probably have this installed locally, but it's not running locally. This is running all on Korea, and that's pretty great. I mean, it's pretty fast right now, which is pretty cool. But say, for example, I try using Firefox. You're going to notice a bit of lag. It might probably won't boot up right away, but that makes some sense. Yeah, so when I was using this for connecting to our private networks at CDOT, we have a cabinet that you've probably noticed at the front. And we can't necessarily just access it via our web browser because we've got to get into the internal network first, and then we can access it. So you can see, kind of loaded. It's actually pretty fast. It's not that much lag. If you were working far away, a few kilometers away, you'd probably notice some lag. And if you tried to scroll, you probably wouldn't be able to scroll right away. But this is working really well right now. So that's probably something that is useful to many of you, but maybe you've never heard of it before. So yeah, -XC, that's the command. Okay, just log out. Next, I want to talk about using the grep commands. Oops. Yeah, Seneca won't let me disconnect now. I don't know. There's something wrong with your computer. Okay, there we go. Great. So the grep command is a very, very fast, it's the fastest of the next few commands I'm talking about, grep, sed, and awk. Grep lets you find information, it reads data, but it doesn't necessarily let you manipulate data. So some of the things you can do with grep is, I guess you could use, let's say I want to look for the line, happy birthday. So I have a file in here that specifies, there's a grep file in here. Don't get confused. The first one is the command. And I'm looking for the line, happy birthday. I've got to put quotes around here because it's not going to work if there's a space. And it should find happy birthday. It's not my birthday, by the way, so don't sing me a song. And I have two versions of this text, actually. I have the first version and the second version. Now, notice this one didn't get picked up because of the capital B. So you can easily disable case-sensitive searching or grepping using -i. And so if I do that with the previous command, you'll see I'll get all the results for happy birthday now. Some other cool tricks with grep is using the capital A or capital B. Capital A, I actually just learned about this too. These let you display the lines that come after or before your match, which is pretty useful. Like, say you're looking for a class definition, and you know the title or the prototype of that function, like def my class brackets your arguments. But you also want to look at the contents of that. Then you can use the -a and say, oh, probably add an extra 20 lines to that to show the rest. So in happy birthday, each happy birthday lyrics has 4 lines. So I'll do @4. And I'll also put the -i option to remove case sensitivity. Oh, what did I do wrong? Oops, I forgot the search. Happy. So I can do this however I want. Should still work. All right. So that's how you use grep. The next thing I want to talk to you about is sed. Now, if any of you have used sed, you'll know that it's kind of insane to use. It's like, you've got to know like all the backslashes, forward slashes, and all the ugly wildcard things you got to use. I'm not going to get into too much detail about the advanced sed commands, but I'll go over how to use it, at least proficiently enough. So I have a file in here as well called sed, and I've got a few lines in here. First thing I want to try is change that first line to did it work false to did it work true. So how do we do that? With sed, we can do a replace starting with S, and inside our first pair of slashes, these are just the delimiters for your replace or your find and your replace matches. The first 2 lines I'll put in, what was it? Something did it work, right? Let me check. Did it work? Okay, so sed. You guys can all see that, right? Is the font big enough? It's great, okay. So you have to start with the S. That means replace. There are other options in sed. I don't necessarily use them all. I usually just use this one. Did it work? And false. And I want to replace that with did it work? True. Okay, and that should work. Okay, as you can see, it's now saying true at the top. And this doesn't necessarily change the file. This is just showing you the output when you run the sed command and how it's going to change the file. If you actually want to change the file, you have to specify the -i option, which will modify it. And now if I go into, or if I cat the sed file, you'll see that it is now changed. Next thing I want to do is change my salary. I want to give myself a bonus. So to do that, we can probably do it the same way we did it last time, but let's say I don't necessarily know how much money I'm making right now. Let's say it's just a random number. So I can do this using -i. Of course, S for replacing, and then again, I'm going to put in my name. Or you know what, I don't even have to put the entire line. I can just put salary and start from there. Now, let's say I don't know what 40,000 is. Let's say I just know it's a number, but I don't know how long it is or what number it is exactly. So I can use this wildcard along with this one. What this does is it's going to first look for any digit, 0 to 9, that's any digit. And if there's 0 or more occurrences of it. If I want to use 1 or more occurrences of it, meaning I know that there's at least 1, I would use plus instead of asterisk. And now I just want to change that to this. How much should I give myself? I want a lot of money. I'll put, let's give myself $1 million. Is that a good enough? Yeah, that seems good enough. Okay, so now that should have worked. Yes, okay, great, I got a bonus. So you see now that there's a bit of garbage here. I want to get rid of this extra line of garbage. To do that, I'm going to use the previous command with a bit more additions to it. I'm going to enable the extended sed commands, or regular expression support, I guess. That's what it's called. But I want to get rid of anything that starts with spaces and ends with some numbers. To do that, I'm going to start with the caret character. The caret just specifies that this is the beginning of the line. And now I'm followed that by a space with an asterisk. The asterisk just means that there are going to be 0 or more spaces. So anything that comes before the asterisk is the subject of the wildcard, I guess. And anything that comes after the spaces that follows with some numbers, and we know it's at least one number, so we use plus instead of asterisk, replace it with nothing. Now by default, this is only going to replace the first one and delete it. We want to delete all of them, so we use G at the end. G just means global, I guess. So by default, sed will look for the first match. We want to use all the matches, and that should work. Yeah, so it's gone now. And I'll just save the changes to make sure. Okay. So that's how you use sed, just a very basic sed command. I also want to talk about using awk. Now, sed is very, very fast. Awk is probably not as fast as sed in most cases, but it is a lot more readable, or at least that's what people tell me it is. It's really not that readable. It's very ugly. So here's an example of using awk. I have an awk file here, and there's a 3 times 3 multiplication table. And I'm going to try to print out everything in the file. So you've got to use quotes, and then there's these braces, and then print, and then $0. I have no idea why they thought of this. Like, that does not look very pleasant, but that's how it is. So this is going to print everything in the awk file. If I want to print just the first column, I would put $1, and so on and so forth. I can put 2 for the second column, and this prints all the rows for the second column, third column, and etc. Now, I don't necessarily want just a bunch of rows and columns. I probably want to do a certain row and column and mix and match those to find what I want. To do that, you can specify the row using nr equals 1 or 2. The number is your row number, and it's not 0 index based, I think. It's only 1. It starts from 1, so that's kind of odd. But that's the way they wanted to do it. So now I'm going to show you all the columns of the first row. And there it is. And you can do the same thing for, sorry, no, this is all the columns for first row, second row, third row. And now if I want to get the first column, first or third row, I just put 1 here, and now I got the 2, or the other numbers. So that's pretty straightforward once you get the syntax down. It does require a lot of memorization, but I mean, it's useful in the long run. You'll find that you can probably do almost anything you want with awk or sed. It's just probably not the nicest method of doing it. But that's pretty much as far as I want to get into awk, except for some commands that you can use with awk, such as you can use substrings. You can also do a lot of other things, but substring, for example, works this way. Print. Oops. And I want to print the substring of, let's say $0. So all the columns. And I want to start from indexed 2, and I think this is 1 index based, not 0 index based, which is super confusing. Even now I'm stumbling on this and I can't even figure out if it's 0 or 1 if it starts from. And I want to delete, or I want to only substring about the length of the row minus 3. And I think I have all my brackets there. Oops, forgot the function substring, oops, sub-str. There we go. Okay, so it only prints the first, well, n number of characters, depending on the line. It'll be different, right? So that's one cool thing with awk. Another cool thing you can do is like specify a variable. Say you have a bash variable that you want to load. You can put in x equals to $. My variable. I don't have that variable, but something like that would work. And you can easily use your bash environment with awk interchangeably. So that's pretty useful. And so of the 3, you have grep, sed, and awk. Grep doesn't really do manipulation like sed and awk does. Grep is only for searching and finding information. However, grep is very limited to what it can do. If you can use grep, I would definitely recommend it. It's so much easier to understand, and it's probably 1,000 times faster when it comes to doing searches. But do take a chance to learn sed or awk. It might be a bit tricky at first, but it'll probably be very useful, at least if you're trying to get used to Linux and you want to learn some neat tricks with it and when you're writing your scripts. Okay, so let's get into terminal emulators. Now, if you haven't noticed already, this is not the regular terminal window. I'm using Terminator right now. Terminator is it's a forked version of the GNOME terminal, which looks like this. Probably noticed it. Ooh, so big. So yeah. The GNOME terminal is pretty okay. I mean, you don't have to use Terminator. I just prefer to use it because I can do a lot of things like splitting windows, such as that, or that, or that. You can do a lot of that. Or you can like change the font size, the font types. There's a lot of fonts available in Terminator, and the colors are really neat. It's just for the sake of having a nice environment to use. But I don't necessarily do this for splitting my windows or organizing my windows because I use tmux now. Tmux I just kind of learned over the last few weeks. Right now I'm actually in a tmux terminal. It's basically like Screen, if any of you know. And if I want to, why do I use it? Is because if I'm in an environment where, or in a situation where I might be disconnected from my terminal, like if I'm SSHing in and Seneca's network goes down, because it happens like all the time, then I don't have to worry about my current command or my current environment being completely destroyed, because it's going to be alive in the tmux session. I'm just going to be detached from it. I'm not going to destroy it. if I'm in Terminator, or sorry, if I'm in a regular terminal without using tmux and I SSH into Matrix or another computer anywhere, and I run a command that takes several minutes to run, if I get disconnected halfway through that, that command's canceling out, and that could be a big issue depending on what you're doing. So I don't like that. That's why I have tmux. And what tmux does is I can do a lot of other neat tricks with tmux. So say, for example, I want to connect to this tmux session. I can do that from the terminal using tmux attached because I only have one session, so I don't have to specify the name. And this will automatically connect this window to my current tmux session. And you notice that the tmux is now shrinked to sort of fit my current attached session. And if I move it, it also changes with me, which is pretty cool. Now I don't want to close the tmux session. Let's say I detach, like I disconnect or something happened and I lost my connection to the tmux. It's still going to be alive because oh God, what did I do? I don't know what I just pressed. Well, let's try that again. Okay, I'm attached. How do I detach? Oh, BD. See, I was doing Control AD. I did the wrong one. So Control B, D. Okay, I detached. But you notice this one did not close. The last example, just forget about that. That never happened. So I detached, and if that were to happen in a real scenario, then I'm safe because tmux protected me. And let's say I'm running a command. So there's this really cool command called yes. This is doing the if you ever used a package manager or something that you know is going to prompt you to say yes all the time, and you're just really lazy, so you forgot to type in the -y option, so you want to just click yes. I'm going to attach this tmux session. It's going, but I lose connection again. It's still going. It's not gone. It's just detached. That's all. So yeah. Okay, you can stop saying yes now. There we go. Okay. Aside from the detaching and attaching the safety procedures, you can also split screens with tmux. You don't have to use the Terminator splitting, which is this. This is kind of, it's nice, but it's not the same. Like this one's a tmux session, but this one's not now because I have an automatic config for this. What I want to do is keep all my tmux sessions together. One tmux session with multiple windows. So what I can do is Control B O. Oh, sorry, not O. Control B quotes or Control B %. And this splits my windows as well. And I can maneuver through them using the keyboard shortcuts as well. And incidentally, if I attach, I also get that splitting, which is pretty cool. So it's still one terminal. It's one tmux session. You don't have to worry about multiple terminal windows all over the place, which I started doing when I was first new to Linux. I'm so glad I finally learned to be organized. But yeah, that's one of the reasons why I like tmux. And it's very customizable as well. Like you can easily, oh, are we running out of time? We got 10 minutes left. Okay. I got to speed up. So that's enough about tmux. If you also want, you should be using screen. The screen command is very similar to tmux, but screen is about 30 years old now. And so you know that a lot of the bug fixes are worked out, but it is very, very old, so nobody works on it anymore. So don't expect new features on it, but it still does what it should. What I usually do is the DMS with the capital S command options. The M stands for detach mode, I think, and the S specifies the screen name. Let's write a yes command again, and all name is, this is the yes command, and run yes. So what this is going to do now, it's going to run the command in a screen session, and it's going to run in the background without me having to worry about it. In this case, if I get disconnected as well, even if I'm not using tmux, it's still running in screen. So I have that layer of protection just in case I lose connection or something happens. So if I want to look at the progress of that screen now, I do -X and type in the, see, I was tabbing again. Tabbing works for most commands. I can now execute it, and you can see I'm here. And if I want to detach, it's Control-A-D for screen instead of Control-B-D for tmux. So I'm gonna cancel that because I don't want it to do anything weird to my system. Oops. Okay, and as you saw there, when the screen command finishes running, the screen just automatically terminates. You don't have to worry about cleanup. If the command finished, it's working great, but you got to make sure that your application it exited correctly. Like there's no logging after screen. Like as soon as the screen's gone, you can't see it anymore. So make sure your scripts are either handled correctly with logs or you just know it's going to work for sure. And that's enough about screen. I want to get into Vim a little bit. So I know a lot of you love Vim. It's like the best text editor out there, right? So if you don't already know, the difference between Vi and Vim, or VI? No. Vi, I don't even know anymore. I do sometimes. On really, really old systems, you might. So if you ever have a chance to work on an old machine, like say an embedded box that doesn't have a package manager, or like pre-Linux, Unix environment, and you don't have Vim improved, you don't have that access. It's just an older version. You don't have the same features that Vim improved has. For example, right now, whoops. Now I'm aliasing Vi to Vim, so don't think I'm using Vi right now. I'm using the latest improved version. By default, you would have to use HKLJ to move around, which is kind of odd with the old version. But thankfully, in the improved version, you have the arrow keys to use. Oh, that was a painful time. But so yeah, for those of you who don't know how to use Vim at all, you use the W key to go through each word, starting with the beginning of the line, E to go to the end of the line with each word, and B to go to the beginning of each word going backwards. This is just so that you don't spend a lot of time, going one by one. It just helps to improve movement in Vim. Not something you might be using regularly, but also traversing between different braces or brackets is very useful, or even quotes, using the % sign, which is very helpful if you have a very, very big function or class or something, or like a for loop. And you don't want to necessarily scroll down to the bottom. You just instantly warp to which side you want to go to. Another thing is if you want to go to a specific line number, you'd use the colon line number, and it'll immediately, whoops. No, my lines are not lined up anymore. Well, line 20 is there, even though it should be there. I think I moved my text a little bit. But that's okay, I think you get the idea. If you want to go to the bottom or the top, to go to the top, you just do capital G. Or, sorry. Right, I always get those confused. GG is top, or GG is bottom. Oh, I got them mixed up, yeah, okay. Sorry. GG goes to the top, capital G goes to the bottom. This is very useful when you have like a few thousand lines of code. Another thing you want to go into is, I'll talk about plugins for Vim, but not right now. Manipulating text. So if you don't already know, to get into insert mode, you just type in lowercase I, or to start from the beginning of the line, you can use capital case I, which brings you to the beginning. To replace a character, use R. You can use just one. Or to go into replacement mode, instead of insert, just do capital R, and you start typing. Always use escape whenever you're going from insert mode or replacement mode outside into the regular normal mode of Vim. I find a lot of people get confused with this, and they end up trying to type commands while they're in insert mode, and it's like, oh, why are you doing that? It's all wrong. It can be confusing, but remember, there's always the, you can type escape as many times as you need to make it work. To get into creating a new line very fast, you use lowercase o or uppercase O. And lowercase o just makes one below. Uppercase is one above. This is just a little shortcut to help you do your job faster. To undo those, just use lowercase u, and that's undone. To redo, Control R. I don't know why Control R, why not just R, but I guess they have the replace there, so they had to change it to something else. To delete a line, use DD. To yank a line, which is just copying, just do YY, and then to paste it, P. So I yanked that line. But I want to delete multiple lines. Let's say I want to delete 7 lines. 7 DD. Oh, that should be DD, not D. All right. 7 DD? Yeah, okay. I made a mistake there. If I want to yank 5 lines, 5 YY. And then I'm going to paste them here. Okay, I got 5 more lines. If I want to delete the end of a text, I can simply do that using $. Okay. So that just deletes everything from the cursor to the end of the line. If you want to find text in Vim, use the slash. When you're in escaped normal mode, make sure you're not an insert, right? Find text. And if you want to find text without caring about the case, you just \C for case, and then find text. Well, let's just look for the find. And we see there's 4 different finds. Both have different cases. We have 3 minutes. Is that enough? All right. When I'm looking through different find texts, I can just use N to go through next, and capital case N to go previous. And one more thing, I guess I'll skip the everything else. To do regex, you can do %s. Same thing as like with sed, you have the find and you have the replace. And G for global. And you see all the finds have now been replaced or finds are replaced now. To save, there's one quick thing I want to show you. There's a really cool trick with Vim that you can do that, so to save, you use :W. To quit, :Q. Quit without saving, :Q exclamation mark, because sometimes you got to make sure you don't want to save. X, just to save and quit. Now, you want to make sure that you're not using WQ because X is faster, and you don't want to be like typing an extra letter. That's too slow. If you're ever caught in this situation where your file is read-only and you really want to save a file, like you made like an hour's work of changing this text, and it tells you you can't save, you don't have permission to save. And some people struggle. They're like, oh, I'm going to try to zoom out and try to select all the text and then copy it to the clipboard and then save it somewhere else, but like get it. That's just really lame. Don't do that. What you can do is saving using sudo. This is a really weird sort of command, but this is going to ask you for your password and log in as root, and then it'll save your password automatically. And now it should be saved. I didn't make any changes, but that's just an example. You have to use this to exit out of there. And yeah, I was going to go into more detailed stuff, but it looks like we're out of time. So yeah, thanks for listening. Is there any questions? Yes? I would say sed is faster, but to some people, awk is more readable. To me, they're both unreadable, so I don't really care. Sed is faster. Yes. Sorry. Any other questions? Oh, yes.
Just awk is essentially a full programming language for text manipulation.
I think sed is as well, isn't it? I think you can make sed files.
You can,
right.
But I don't think it's got quite the power.
Okay, it probably has more power. Right, yeah, you're right. But I still prefer sed if I can. Sorry. Well, anyway, I hope I taught some of you guys some new tricks. If not, I'm sorry for wasting your time. But thank you, and enjoy the rest of FSOSS.